What's up, government seekers? How are you doing? We're getting the new studio. It's a virtual background behind me. So we'll see how this works. I tried to get I was working this morning on getting my better camera set up and my ring light. For some reason, not recognizing it. Don't know why. So we've got the better sound. We've got a little better light now. We've got the familiar background that you citizens of Gotham are used to. But I don't know. We'll get the camera. We're dialing it more and more since I moved. But thank you everybody for being in the chat. We've got Blaze Saver Wolf and Holly Horner, our moderators. You know the rules. You can ask questions. You can discuss stuff. You can even debate in the chat. But if you start being weird or insulting, give them the old block. But maybe put them in a timeout. If they're just posting the same thing 15 times in a row in all caps, that's a bot or just a jackwagon. So block jackwagons, folks. That's what we're all about. Thank you to everybody watching on my YouTube and Lee Camp's YouTube. As we say every week, if you are watching on one of our YouTubes, make sure you go over and subscribe to the other guy's YouTube, because that always helps. Good to see everyone in the chat. Like, share, subscribe, and all of that stuff. And everybody watching on Rockfin, it is helpful. All right. And let me make sure I got that dialed in. All right. Let me make sure everything's doing well. Okay. I have yet to unpack my government secrets mug, so this is just some weird mug. But folks, if you want a government secrets mug, go to patreon.com government secrets. You see it scrolling below, and there's a mug tier. You're supporting our show, and you get bonus content. There are, I don't know, I want to say 20 bonus segments that if you were to join Patreon today, you would get all of those. And then, of course, we go live right after this show. So thank you, everybody. Free of jackwagons this morning. This is a jackwagon free zone, guys. You know what I mean? So you don't have to be a jackwagon. Got a new office chair. My back is very happy. All right, here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Government Secrets with the two most censored comedians in the world, Lee Camp and Graham Elwood. Episode 109.
All right, here are my notes on your intro. First of all, not most censored in the world. There's a comedian probably in a cell in a dungeon in Egypt somewhere going, "You are not the most censored comedians in the world." Graham, are you not hearing me?
No, I'm not. I wasn't hearing you at all.
You can now?
Now I can. I don't know what happened. How about that?
Testing.
What happened? Hold on. Oh, loving it. Boy, this is the beauty of setting up a... How about now?
Testing.
Camp at all.
Check. You know, it might be better like this. I feel like we'd have a better show if neither of us could hear each other. Can the...
I heard that. That I heard.
You heard that?
You might not be wrong. It would be a better show if neither of us could hear the other guy. We would just both be like, wait, what did you say? I don't know what you said. So this is Government Secrets, episode 109 with Lee Camp and Graham Elwood, the two most censored comedians in America who marginally can hear each other.
Yes, that we a roaring start. Coming in hot, as they say.
Coming in hot, super hot. I just was focused on not having a gray wall background, which you can kind of see when my hand moves quickly over the green screen.
I'm hoping the background, the virtual background disappears at some point, and it's just the mattress from Mattress Cam fame sitting there behind you.
Well, the mattress camper just got he got his own show. He's got an agent. It's like, all right, he got a Netflix deal. It's like, whatever. He's not taking my calls anymore. I'm like, okay, all right.
He's actually hosting Aggressive Progressives now. So
yeah, he's gone full neoliberal. He's just chasing those clicks because there's more money in that.
Oh, fucking click chaser.
He's a dirty click chaser.
Oh, and by the way, this is a virtual background. It of a bookshelf that's just has slightly less random shit on it than my real bookshelf. So
okay, I forgot to powder my face before we're doing the show, so we're gonna just do this live because I've seen myself get a little shiny. For those of you listening at home, you're missing out on some amazing content of me.
The first 15 minutes of every show is just Graham getting things set up, putting on his makeup, making sure he's got the desk chair. Perfect. Putting the curl in place.
Got the curl going. It's just moving to a new studio. There's just a lot of business happening here. Like I had to put together last night this new office chair because I was using my buddy's office chair that I think he acquired in Reagan's first term or something like that. And so it was like some type of Guantanamo Bay torture chair. So it was killing my back. So I got a new one, bought a brand new chair yesterday, which is nice, but I had to assemble it. So,
Oh, does that mean it was like an IKEA chair and you end up not having all the parts? So you just used nails and hammer them in?
No, it was not an IKEA chair. But I believe it was made in Vietnam. That's what it said on the box. It's pretty easy. It came with an Allen wrench or whatever. But it takes a little bit of time.
The kid in the box said he was from Vietnam, so he put it together and left.
Yeah, it's like one of those sponsored child programs. There's like a photo of a 9-year-old going, "I made this for 4 cents," and you're like, "Oh, thanks." So,
well, I'm glad things are getting set up there.
I feel like we should do my segment first because I bet you mine has less fun in it than yours.
It's good to lead with less fun. We thought about calling the show "Lead with Less Fun," but
I'm down with that show. Ladies and gentlemen, time for another episode of Lead
Fun Up Top. That's what I said when I got my junk pierced. It's less fun up top.
I kind of think you might be serious that you got your junk pierced. I don't want to go into any details. I don't want to know. Feels like something you might have done in one of your druid ceremonies on Easter Island or whatever. So I don't want to know, Lee, what you're doing with your junk in your spare time.
Then I'll leave it at that. I'll leave the mystery alive.
That's what we want, is the mystery. We want the mystery. Oh, goodness. No, I think
all right, so we will just tease that in the second segment, I will be tearing apart forensic science because they need to remove the word science from it.
Yeah. Which I'm really curious to hear your segment because I'm always loved those forensic science shows, and I think there's a lot of interesting stuff in it. But now you're going to say it's all nonsense, so that's going to be fun. So
yet again, I'm ruining Graham's view of the world.
Yeah, I have a couple little things that are fun, that are hopeful. I get to watch a forensic files show.
My next segment is the real physics of Batman. Just don't tear apart grappling hooks.
It's just like why you shouldn't watch baseball. Like, Lee, enough. It's the one thing I get. Like, come on.
Graham, I don't mean to ruin things, but Mark McGuire was on steroids.
Wait, I'm sorry. Breaking news on Government Secrets. The giant guy that shattered home run records that were never going to be broken was taking a banned substance. I'm perplexed. Well, what I was saying was, in terms of the least, is we've done this in the past where we've led with a super funny segment and then we close with like a super intense one. So yeah. I was like,
I especially liked the the live show in Britain where I just slowly melted the audience down with brutal facts about Britain's past until they no longer wanted to be there anymore.
Yeah. And afterwards we were like, maybe they were just hoping for just a night of not knowing how awful Britain is and just giving you go, yes, America's worse than we are. And then we kind of took that away from them.
Maybe maybe people tune in for why America sucks. Yeah.
The whole reason we bought tickets to see these two Yanks is because they were going to tell us that actually we're not as awful as America. And no, turns out we are. Like we've been being horrible longer. And it was like,
I like how when you say Yanks like that, it works because it means Yankee, but it also sounds like just a synonym for jack off.
yeah,
We bought tickets for these two Yanks.
it does sound like something a guy in Chicago said. These strokes, these humps, these
Fucking
jamokes.
Yanks
It's like
over here.
a couple of Yanks over here running their yap holes about this and that. So, all right, folks, if you're watching, please hit the like button, subscribe button. If you're listening, give us positive reviews in whatever format you're listening to. Spread the word. Follow both of us on our respective social media platforms, because that all those algorithm analytic-y things help our show. Let's do segment number 1. Operation Belladonna.
And now you've put in a challenge for us to make this funny. I think we can do it.
I think we can do
If it's named Belladonna.
There's always some fun in the CIA operations because there's usually some like glaring either nobody thought this through from the beginning, or it's just like, hey, here's pure evil on a stick, you know?
Yeah.
So this one, it's declassified information on CIA's involvement in Ukrainian nationalism. Discover the role the United States played in the growth of nationalists in Ukraine. And this actually was sent to us. Somebody on Twitter said, hey, are you guys aware of this? So Operation Belladonna. What's that?
Oh, I was just thanking people for sending in good topics.
Thank you, everybody, for sending us good topics. So as we refuse to acknowledge that America is backing neo-Nazis in Ukraine today, it's not surprising that there's been no mention of the fact we've been backing. Lee, what year do you think we started backing Ukrainian neo-Nazis?
Well, it's weird because and even the people that acknowledge that the U.S. has been backing Nazis in Ukraine, most of us have been talking about like 2014 and beyond, because that's when the Maidan coup was. But I have a funny feeling you're going to say before 2014.
Ooh, Lee. I'll give you 4 choices. I'll give you 4 year choices to pick from. Was it 2013? 1864?
What was there a Ukraine in 1864?
1998 or 1946?
I'm going to go with 46.
I'm going to go, you're correctly, Camp. Congratulations. We've been backing Nazis since right after the end of World War II.
Which seems like a key time to not.
We were just fighting them for 4 years. We had Americans died, about 400,000 Americans died, 20 to 25 million Russians died. Good time to side up with the enemy.
It seems like when they were looking over resumes following that, the Nazis would hand them a resume and they'd be like, this, not so good. Not so good what you've done here. But no.
But I feel like the CIA went, actually, you guys.
Well, yes. And in fact, I know we're getting into a different angle of it, but we have talked about how the U.S. and the CIA brought lead Nazis over here, mainly scientists, but to the U.S. to help us do things like go to the moon.
Yeah, so we've talked about that's Operation Paperclip. We've talked about that on the show. We've also talked about Operation Bloodstone, which is backing Nazis post-World War II in the 50s and 60s to overthrow or undermine communist countries. But
what's it doing? Because Oh, Bloodstone was CIA. Gladio was like NATO or something. Was
Yeah,
Gladio?
Gladio was the one that you brought up of the specifically NATO countries,
Right.
um, where Bloodstone was like in the Soviet republics, various Soviet republics,
Oh,
not
okay.
Western Europe,
Yeah.
but like Eastern Europe ones, like, you know, what would that be, like Poland, Czechoslovakia, and stuff like that.
Yep. Yep.
So there is a declassified document going back to November 1946, talking about Operation Belladonna, and the country is the Ukraine. The If we analyze, this is from the uh, realist journalism. If we analyze publicly available declassified documents from the Central Intelligence Agency, we can learn quite a bit about the United States and its role in historical development of Ukrainian nationalism. To view, this is a key line that I feel like no mainstream media is going to have this line. This is why I had to go to an alternative source. Again, these are publicly available declassified documents, which always brings up the question, well, then why does some obscure website is the only one showing them? Why isn't CNN
Right.
showing them?
Right.
Here's a sentence that might give you some insight on that, Lee. To view the February 22nd Russia-Ukraine conflict in isolation would be a mistake.
Yeah, and they would like you to believe it all began this past February.
Yeah, I mean, literally, like maybe January. That's as far back as they want you to go. Everything was
Right.
going great. And then Putin was like, I decide I want to take over the world. I'm crazy.
Yep.
And he did that.
He shook his magic 8 ball and it said, "Go nuts."
Go nuts. Go nuts. Even though he agreed to peace talks, that Zelensky was like, let's do peace talks. And then Boris Johnson shows up. And then immediately following that, all of a sudden, Ukraine doesn't want to do peace talks. And they're talking about putting nukes across Russia's border. And then within 48 hours of that, that's weird, that's when Putin invaded. That has nothing to do with anything. Anyway, so the declassified documents detailing Operation Belladonna, we can see the United States had already made contact with Ukrainian nationalists that were keen to ally with the Americans against the USSR, primarily through influencing the development of Ukrainian Supreme Liberation Council, UHVR. The subject discussed in the document was used to gather intelligence on the USSR and Soviet operations, both at home and abroad. You can see in this document, it says the collection of positive and counterintelligence from Ukrainian SSR and other regions of the Soviet Union, which is already available to or can be obtained by Ukrainian underground movement. Take a guess who they are. Anyway,
It wasn't like underground movement to rescue people being sex trafficked.
No,
That's
no,
not who they were leaving
no.
weapons and munitions for.
Yeah. The accumulation of information to the status of the Ukrainian underground movement for use as a frame of reference is in ascertaining the various ways in which the existence of this movement could have bearing on the source of open conflict between the United States and the USSR. The debriefing of the Ukrainian underground personnel, other Ukrainians. So they debriefed them. So they knew these guys. They knew them. And liaison with the Air Force, both in Washington and with the United States Armed Forces A2 locally, to determine the feasibility of a night drop over the Western Ukraine during June 1950 to lay on the training program for the heater crew, procurement and servicing of the Minecraft dry run. So we can see
What did they want the Nazis to do?
they were using them because at that time,
kill
Ukraine,
commies?
yeah, basically monitor the Soviets, because that was post World War II where Ukraine became part of the Soviet Union. and they wanted to monitor the Soviets from within Ukraine. And the two organizations that the CIA was aware of was the Bandera and Milik factions of the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists, or the OUN, in addition to the Ukrainian Insurgent Army, which is the UPA. The document goes to outline the scale of the UHVR apparatus, noting how many countries its members are stationed in and the extent of suggested reports. It goes to the communications, the cutouts, which is establishment of other countries besides Germany, utilization of International Red Cross.
Nice.
So that's what the Red Cross really was set up, right? That's what it was set up to help people. But hey, the CIA can use it to find Nazis.
It was nice because the sign, they didn't have to change the signs much. They just brushed off the edges of the swastikas, and you get the Red Cross. So
yeah, that's great.
Just take a little scrape.
Yeah. They are getting Soviet books and newspapers, and they're getting people inside the USSR, medical supplies, sanitary equipment, stuff like that. Study of new penetration systems, utilization of Red Army deserters through re-education for agent work or conditioning to the Ukrainian capture, dispatch of agents into the near Egypt, Turkey, Iran, Syria, and Palestine. It talks about the financing. And then it got into Project. So that was and then we get into Project Cartel and Aerodynamic, which is what this one is. As the CIA expanded its operation in Ukraine, additional projects, which is Aerodynamic, formerly Project Cartel, Androgen, and AC Cartridge, which operated between the years of 1949 to 1970, being reclassified under project named QR Dynamic in 1970 and later PD Dynamic in 1974. And finally, QR Dynamic / QR Plum, formerly AEB Hive. All these names are nuts. That operation, so they just kind of switched names and changed directives moderately, but that then was operated until 1991. So in these documents, you're basically seeing from really from 46 to 91. That's when the Soviet Union ended.
And this fits with something we've covered a few times before in various ways, which is that the West and the US specifically, in many ways, were maybe not more, but equally threatened by the so-called communist threat, by the idea, because the thing is, and you know, I'm no supporter of communism, but I also am a supporter of workers, and communism was, came out of a worker revolution. So the capitalists were very afraid that the ideas put forward in the communist revolution could take over the United States and many other countries. And part of the reason we covered in our episode on dropping the atomic bombs, which did not need to be dropped, and if you need all the details about that, please go back and listen to that episode. There's no reason we needed to drop atomic bombs in World War II, but it was to set an example and show the Soviet Union that we had these bombs and that we were willing to use them, because our ruling class viewed communism in many ways as almost more of a threat than the Nazis. The Nazis were more of a threat at that time because they were the ones taking territory and, going towards, invading London, invading England and stuff. But in terms of ideologies, I think the ruling class viewed communism as a more threatening ideology.
Well, yeah, and you also bring up another thing we brought up on this show is how several companies were sort of like, well, if the Nazis win, that could be good for business too. And where I really think just from like early on, they were like, man, maybe these Nazis can be good for business, and we showed how they did business with the Nazis throughout. Some American corporations had business with the Nazis throughout World War II. But I think really, like you say, the ruling elites just basically crunched the numbers and went, well, I think communism is going to cut into our profits more. So
Right.
we're okay with Nazis then. And this is still happening today. This is exactly what while Russia is not a communist country anymore,
Not at all, which a lot of Americans have not yet realized.
they don't realize that. They keep calling it the Soviet Union, and they think, whatever, and like, oh, Putin keeps getting elected and he stacks the elections. And maybe he does, but our elections are stacked and crooked. And so
Yeah.
it's, so it's really, this is just what's happening in Ukraine is really just the extension of what the CIA has been doing since quite literally 1946. I'll read a couple more. There are thousands of documents that contain sensitive information regarding these project names and the activities involved. A treasure trove of United States history that seems to have gone under the radar of the mainstream press. Gee, I wonder why. The declassified documents from 1950 show the initial project outlines for Project Cartel, which is the CIA had successfully established a network of counterintelligence with Ukrainian underground nationalists. Under Project Cartel, it was worth noting that each document refers to a list of subjects by name, Cartel 1, Cartel 2, and so on, which is, you can see like Cartel 1 is a cryptonym for Ivan Hinich, and Cartel 2 is Mayoka Lebed, which were like known Ukrainian nationalists. So the Ivan Hinrich and Mykola Lebed are few of the subjects within the cartel that play a significant role throughout the declassified. In this document, it outlines their involvement along with other cartel members with regards to setting up communication channels and procurement of weaponry. The document outlines the supply list. In a 1966 declassified document, we can see the noted objective of Project Aerodynamic in that time. It notes that the underlying objective is quote, gotta love CIA language, nationalist flare-ups.
like a venereal disease.
Yeah, or just a rash or something. You know what I mean? Like maybe you have an allergic reaction to something. You know what I mean? Like shellfish.
Yeah, the CIA is they're kind of STD-ish in their behavior.
Yeah, or maybe they're just talking about like a gluten allergy. So like if you have too much gluten, you just suddenly you have a flare up where you want to kill non-blonde haired, blue-eyed white people and you want to put a swastika tattoo on your body. You know what I mean? Like
that gluten, I was wondering.
That's a lot of gluten does that, and shellfish as well. Like if some people are allergic, so they eat some shrimp and then their face just pops up with like SS tattoos and and a desire to murder people that don't look like that.
Sprouts a tiny little mustache very quickly.
You get a flare up right there, and then your arm always is like doing that. You know what I mean? You have the weird flare up. So that was the nationalist flare ups. The document goes on to outline the usage of anti-Soviet emojis in collaboration with the ZPUHVR to archive their aims. We can see the reappearance of Ivan Hinrich and Mykola labeled as Lebed as well. Through in this document, they're under different synonyms. So the one interesting piece of information in this document is the admission that ZPUHVR clandestine activities conducted through the Prologue Research and Publishing Association in New York. I'm glad we did a Prologue and Research and a publishing company out of New York. The Mykola Lebed was appointed the president of Prologue, becoming the principal agent of Project Aerodynamic. The premises of Prologue are located in a large residential apartment building in New York, so that surveillance of the premises would be more difficult than if the offices were located in a private building.
Nice.
Oh, I'm sure. I wish the co-op of that building knew who they had in their building. The operations were not just isolated to New York. Oh, this is fantastic. Another declassified document reveals some additional objectives of Project Aerodynamic, one of which is to utilize broadcast time available on the Kubark, a cryptonym for CIA, radio station in Athens, Greece. Its operation was intended to deliver communications to multiple groups, namely the Ukrainian Insurgent Army, the UPA, and members of the indigenous populations, to maintain a national consciousness and to encourage pride in their heritage and individuality of their culture. So you can see, I mean, what this says to me as I discern this information is these seeds have been planted for the better part of 7 decades, right? So when this invasion by Russia, as we both have said, we're not in favor of it, happened, it was so easy to flip the switch to I support Ukraine, and everyone just makes Putin in the West, Putin the bad guy. Nobody asks any of these questions. Nobody looks through any of these declassified documents. Not even just, you don't even have to go back to 1946 like we're doing. You just go back to 2014, right? And it makes it.
People don't even read the old New York Times from 2014 calling the Azov Battalion Nazis.
Yes, they can't go back that far. And so,
or the video of John McCain and there's other congressional staff there meeting with the Azov Battalion on video in 2013 and saying, we want to give you everything you need.
Yes, everything you need. And the media, and so they laid this groundwork again through propaganda, not just on the ground, working, but like propaganda in the West. And so they used in New York, and using Greek radio and just talking about, well, we're proud. And that's the language we hear that from white nationalists here in the States. I'm not against black people. I'm just a proud white guy. Can't I be proud of my race? And it's like, all right, man, we know what's behind this. And so this is why to me, you look at these documents and go, wow, this is why it was so easy to just go, yep, support Ukraine. And no one's talking about, Russia's point of view on this, as you know, but our audience might not be aware of it. They call this the denazification of the Ukraine.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, and we haven't even mentioned I believe 15,000 people the Nazis killed in Donbass before this invasion began, between 2014 and last February.
Yeah. That's, you gotta break a few eggs, Lee. Along with stoking of nationalist tendencies, the document also revealed clear intentions to create dissatisfaction amongst Ukrainian military personnel against the USSR. So the Ukrainian military that was working with the Soviet Union when it was a Soviet state, they were trying to get them create division. So the CIA has been helping create division in the Ukraine since the 40s.
Right.
Yeah. What's the other? In case there is any further questions with regards to the CIA's involvement in development of Ukrainian nationalism, we can look no further than a document from 1958, which reveals, quote, I emphasize that the main rationale of our support of the A.E. Sassawari was to have a foothold in the whole subject of Ukrainian nationalism in order to be able to exploit it in various parts of the world, with ultimate targeting, of course, at Ukrainian SSR. That's a direct quote. Then we go into March of 52. Another, along with Project Aerodynamic, Project Kapelin is one of them. The area of operations for Kapelin were Munich, Germany, where its first noted primary aim is counter-espionage information on Cassawari's and Cavatina's project. In our reference, our research aid, we can also see these subjects are one of the cryptonym for Stefan Bandera. The document illustrates one of the project subjects, Kaplan was recruited as early as 46. The document goes on to reveal intricate details about the project, estimated costs, special equipment, etc. The principal agent of this project is being noted as a counterintelligence, counterespionage informant. They note has provided valuable information on Ukrainian emerge organizations, personalities, and intelligence agencies from many different countries. An interesting part of this document is another admission of intent to take advantage of nationalistic tendencies. This is a quote. His penetration of the SB has been of particular value to the CE section by providing net-only information on ZCHOUN activities, but also an opportunity to direct or influence those activities in certain instances. So it's the typical thing of infiltrating the neo-Nazi organizations, neo-Nazi groups or whatever, and giving them to like stoke up nationalism, them to stoke up anti-Russian, anti-Soviet attitude, which is what we know. We've talked about this. Private intelligence infiltrates every organization, right or left, and gets everybody to fight with each other.
Right.
But this had a specific goal. So, and then this article goes on to put it into the context, as we have done a little bit, into Ukraine today, right? It is important to note that these projects define a half century of support for Ukrainian nationalism, and there are still thousands more to analyze. I mean, there's thousands of these documents, right? The role the United States played in the historical development of Ukrainian nationalism, with all of its ugly side effects, should be examined closely. The massive collective effort of the internet can surely shed more light on this history. And they show the New York Times saying, Putin, Russia attacks as Putin warns world, Biden holds him accountable. So, yeah. And it talks about how they said the Russia calls this the denazification and the demilitarization of Ukraine, something we just say Putin is bloodthirsty and hungry for power or whatever. And it doesn't go into any of the things that Russia is actually. And then you see they put in this article a bunch of headlines, basically denouncing Putin's denazification. Russia's misguided denazification of Ukraine is a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? There's another one. Putin's claims of fighting against Ukrainian neo-Nazis distorts history. And listen to this one, though. This one will make you laugh even more. The anti-Semitism animating Putin's claim to denazify Ukraine. So he's anti-Semitic by saying he wants to denazify.
Right. And if you really want peace, you want war. We have to create peace, we need endless war. It's the only way. Yeah.
And then they show this journal, that the Red Street Journal then shows the Western media before February 22. And they show all these photos and clips of Western media going, wow, look at these neo-Nazis in Ukraine. There's all these just photos, just violent anti-Semitism is gripping Ukraine and the government is standing idly by. I mean, they're just all over the place. And
the only response people have is, well, Zelensky's Jewish, so not true to everything you say.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, Obama was black and he bombed the shit out of non-white countries. Like, you can have somebody who identifies as the thing they're crushing.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Who was the Attorney General of the state of California that put more black people behind bars? Oh, Kamala Harris. Okay, yeah, there we go. So there's like,
she sounds familiar. What did she go on to do after that? I can't remember.
Did she buy Twitter? I can't remember.
Yeah, that might be it. Might be it.
That's our long, rich history in backing Nazis in the Ukraine.
I'm glad to go back that far. I was concerned that it was only 2014. And I thought we'd really been remiss at our pro-Nazi actions.
No, we've been literally pro-Nazi since like
the moment World War II ended.
Moment it ended. We won. Hey, fellas, you guys were pretty good at what you did.
Like, do you guys have some time on your hands now that whole your job you were working at is not going anymore?
There's somebody in the CIA office going, I know a bunch of guys in Germany that could use some work. They're
looking for a little, little action.
I know some guy's hungry for a job. I'm just telling you that. I can tell you that much.
All right, so let's get on to segment number 2.
Government secret segment number 2. Bite mark forensics. Truth or scam?
So I've been wanting to do this for a while, and if I'm able to find the time and the energy, this will be a bit of a series of breaking down forensic quote unquote science. And I'm trying to several different components of it. Now, I will say up top that there are parts of forensic science that is absolutely real, like DNA analysis, and there are some others. Fingerprints are fairly good, although I will say there's actually no proof that we each have our own individual fingerprints. There could be someone with your fingerprints out there. They've just never found two people with the same fingerprints. But so that's but the other thing that's more important about fingerprints is that it kind of has to be a perfect fingerprint to be useful. The whole, this guy sneezed and wiped half a thumbprint somewhere,
right,
is not, that's bullshit. But fingerprints largely are legit. However, a lot of forensic science is fucking garbage science, and it's been used. And why is this a government secret? Well, it's been used by state governments throughout the United States and maybe other countries as well, but throughout the United States to lock people up or sometimes execute them, often lock them up for their entire lives based on science that isn't fucking science. It's like the polar opposite of science. Science is when you test something and can prove that it does this thing every time, that you can test experiments, and forensic science is the opposite. So this week, I thought I'd get into bite mark analysis.
Oh, man.
And at first, I was only going to give the broader context of this, but I think it helps to. So this is from The Guardian, actually, one of their few moments of good journalism in the past few years. They did an article on this, and I wanted to give. They start out by giving an individual case, and I think it's important to understand the individual case because it shows you how this shit is used. They say Charles McCrory is haunted by a memory from his 1985 trial in which he was accused of murdering his wife, Julie Bonds, in a bloody attack at their home in Andalusia, a small town in deepest Alabama, which means it's probably not pronounced Andalusia. It's probably pronounced Andalusia or something. They always have these grandiose names that you're not pronouncing it right. It's Andalusia.
I'm sure boy, I closed my eyes. I thought I was in Alabama for a second. That was spot on.
Like New Orleans is Nolans. So,
well, that's New Orleans. That's Southern Louisiana. They love correcting how you say things. Like anytime you go down there,
that's all of the South, my friend.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's not a stop sign. That's a stop or whatever they say.
If you want, you can show that article there. But so this is in the hills of Alabama, where they love to lock people up for killing their wives, and even if they don't have any evidence. But
you took a pause between even if they didn't have an evidence, where it's just like, they're always locking some guy up for killing his wife. Like, how are you saying, like, back in the day, a guy could just murder his wife and didn't have to be hassled about it? Like, what is?
There was a moment there where Graham thought he had to jump in and be like, Lee, I think we disagree on this. I'm actually for locking up people who murder their wives.
Yeah, anybody that murders anybody, I'm gonna go on record as saying I think they should be held accountable.
Graham, you should have talked to me about this before we got 100 episodes in. All right, I am pro murder.
Just only in the cases of a spouse, like anyone murder their spouse, male or female, gay, straight. Is that
only? I'm very opposed to murder outside of that, but when it's a spouse.
No murder outside of marriage. That's that's your campaign promise.
No murders outside of marriage. Absolutely.
Only murder in marriage. Murder in marriage. Lee Camp 2024. I'm voting for that.
Graham, you've been married at least once, don't you? You know what I'm saying.
I've been married technically twice, but yes, and the reason there won't be a
That's why
third
I said
time.
at least.
Your campaign promise makes me never want to get married a third time. So this is
So what haunts McCrory, they say, is the look on the jurors' faces as they listen to the testimony of the prosecution's star witness, a dentist named Richard Souveron. I mean, I imagine this is another one. It's probably a French origin or something, but he probably pronounced it Souviron or something. And, in France, it'd be Souveron. But anyway, I'll say Souveron. He was a founding father of the cutting-edge branch of forensic science known as bite mark analysis, which claimed to be able to identify violent criminals by matching their unique dental patterns to the bite marks on the bite wounds on the victims' bodies. McCrory was expecting Souviron's evidence to be nuanced, to say, well, we think it likely came from that kind of thing. Instead, and in the initial report, the dentist had been cautious about what he deduced from the puncture marks on the body, on the arm of the body, saying the injuries were insufficiently distinct to allow a positive match. But when he was in front of the jury, he said, when asked whether the teeth marks were those were teeth marks, he said yes. And then when asked, in your expert opinion, based on the evidence presented to you, were the teeth marks made by Charles McCrory? The dentist said yes.
He changed.
What's that?
He changed his stance, or?
Yeah, when he wasn't in front of the jury, he said, it was like, I think it's not quite clear. And then when he was in front of the jury, he said, absolutely, it's the perpetrator. Now, this guy, I don't think they get into this in the article, but he basically made a career out of this. Well, I'll keep going because I don't want to step on things I might be saying, but
he made a career out of fake mouth science.
Yeah, they became kind of, there were a few experts, quote unquote experts, that became kind of superstars in the these big trials where you'd have we can't prove it was the husband, but there's a slight indentation on their shoulder and it was him, and the whole trial, the whole jury goes ah, and the crowd cheers fucking.
So like anybody, they got drunk on the fame and the everything else, and they just said,
Basically,
right.
The forensic pathologist soaking up so much glamorous TV coverage. I mean, nowadays it's constant, CSI and all these things, movies and everything that you see. I mean, especially those TV shows, you see them talk about tooth bite analysis all the time. I saw one, I don't know if it was CSI or NCIS or one of them, where they literally just put the tooth pattern into a computer, and then you see the computer go blip, 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 and all these little arrows point at various indentations, and then it's like the killer was Stan. Just
that's my favorite type of computer. Just blip, 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 just from the original Star Trek, just doo doo dee pop pop pop, just lights, like Christmas lights flash, and then one of those punch card things comes out, and they read it like, oh, it's Stan.
Someone was making fun of NCIS, where it showed them frantically working at the computer, and in one scene, we don't have enough time. They're in such a rush that two of them start typing on the keyboard simultaneously. And they're like, that's not how computers work. You can't divvy up the keyboard. Here, you work on that half.
Well, that's in that world of that's my favorite thing about any sort of, computer. The hacker is always some nerd, eating, drinking Mountain Dews and Tostitos, and just goes click, 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 I'm in. Yeah. Oh, wow. That's it. That's
all you got to do is jam a Cheeto into the keyboard, and No,
Yeah.
that's it.
Pour Red Bull over it and then click.
And it's always a 14-year-old girl. They're like, these hackers are young kids and they're dominating our world.
Yeah. There is a nerd who never goes outside or whatever. Yeah.
So by the late, so forensic pathologists were getting famous, and the article says it was only a matter of time before dentists wanted to get in on the game. By the late 1970s, and this was chronicled in a book. The author's name is Fabricant, all about how forensic science is garbage. But by the 1970s, forensic is it odontology? Odontology was orthodontist, I guess. So odontology was starting to emerge, pioneered by a small number of individuals who were portrayed as swashbuckling crime fighters, handsome, fit, prone to ghoulish humor, comfortable with dead bodies, brilliant men's men. Fabricant quotes the Los Angeles Times, remarking admiringly at one of the pioneers, saying, quote, this is from the LA Times, quote, his job is to fill jail cells, not cavities. Instead of tracking down decay, he tracks down people.
His job is to fill jail cells, not cavities. Wow. That sounds like a, injury lawyer's bus advertisement, as it goes by, like, especially in LA where it's like accidentes or whatever, like, dentist putting crime in its place, filling
Right.
that, whatever, take the crime tartar fluoride, some pun on
This might
dental
be,
work.
if you're looking to write a screenplay, Graham, this might be it. The vigilante dentist. So
That's the goal of the show, Vigilante. My show is to, like, really ultimately become a dentist that solves crimes. That's my goal.
So 12 of these dentists got together. They're considered the founding fathers of forensic odontology. And they believe that bite mark evidence could be used as a new tool up there with fingerprints, because everyone, I don't know when fingerprints became a thing. And like I said, they do work most of the time, but what we're not told is they do need to be kind of perfect fingerprints. But I think it was maybe around the early 1900s was when they kind of came heavily into vogue. But so but people were stars by finding fingerprints around a crime. It changed everything. Like it used to be you could murder someone, and as long as you didn't leave your fucking shoe and wallet there, you'd get away with it. And then fingerprints come along, and oh my God, it's a new game in town.
Yeah,
As
just
long as
a
you didn't
shoe
spell
and
out your last forwarding address in blood on the wall.
I love just the one shoe. Like, that's how some guys got caught. They just, oh, I left my shoe there, and it had my
Listen,
initials and phone number in the
Graham, I don't know if
heel.
you've ever murdered a spouse, but it gets kind of hairy, and sometimes you lose a shoe.
No, I don't get the murdering the spouse thing. Like, the divorce is right there in front of you guys. There's no reason to murder a spouse. Like, just get a divorce.
Oh my God, I'm going to bring shoes and divorce together. And I remember there's some tribes, I don't know, I don't remember, I don't want to fuck it up, so I don't remember which country it was in, but the tradition used to be, and I don't know whether they keep with it now, that all the wife had to do when she wanted a divorce was just leave the man's shoes out front of the hut, and that meant it was over. And that was the end of it.
Ooh.
No lawyers, no prenups, no, just put the shoes out, you're fucked.
Bye. Find a new hut. Like, damn, that's rough. That's rough.
But so these founding fathers of forensic odontology figured to be taken seriously, they needed to establish their reputation, and for that they needed to be recognized as a specific specialism. So they began in 1976 by forming the odontology section within America's top professional forensic body, the American Academy of Forensic Sciences. Not content with playing second fiddle, they then created their own organization, the American Board of Forensic Odontology. As icing on the cake, they granted themselves a fancy title of diplomates. they called themselves, signaling their specialist status. Because otherwise, they're just fucking dentists. These are just dentists. But
Yeah.
we're supposed to view them as these heroes with, they did wear capes. There were a lot of capes.
These are nerds that are like, everybody gets bummed out at going to the dentist. Dentists have a high suicide rate, and everyone's like, "Oh, great." Oh, it's like, and everyone makes the comparison. Oh, I'd rather go to the dentist. And they're like, when something's really awful, they always compare it to going to the dentist. So they're like, what if we make ourselves into crime fighters using flim flam science? And everyone's like, yes, the hero dentists that are solving crimes wearing capes and tight slacks.
So they make the point that when Severon, the guy in this,
Severon sounds more like kind of a superhero, or Severon.
Severon, when he showed up for this testimony, they make the point that he wasn't introduced as dentist from Florida. He was introduced as Dr. Richard Severon, board certified diplomate and member of the ABFO. Like, that was his title instead of fucking dentist.
So you're a dentist? No, I'm a member of the AFBCO and the League of Super Dentist Heroes.
So the jury obviously falls for that type of thing. They're like, oh, this guy's an expert. He knows way more than we could ever know. The problem was, as the article says, bite mark analysis, like many of the new forensic techniques, was founded upon fucking nothing. There are 2 stages involved in matching a wound to the individual perpetrator, and both of them are pretty flaky. The first is categorically to confirm that the wound is caused by someone's teeth and not just by sharp object or something else. The second stage is to link the alleged bite mark to the dental pattern of the suspect by taking a mold of the suspect's teeth, comparing it to the wound. Analysis in both those stages, contrary to scientific method and popular belief, is completely subjective. And this is the best part of this whole fucking thing. A study published in 2009 by New York scientists tested whether skin could accurately record the impressions left by teeth, the 3D equivalent of a fingerprint, and found that it could not. Like, dead skin does not really hold the pattern of teeth very effectively. The scientists simulated 23 identical bites on a single piece of unembalmed cadaver skin. They discovered that the bite...
Wait a minute. Hold on. Who had to do that test? Who's like, hey, Larry, the intern, I need you to bite a cadaver's arm 23 times. We got to test this out here. Like, oh my God. You want to be a full on?
And Larry, you need to bite exactly the same every time. So don't start skimping on the last few.
No. And it's like, I don't want to do that. Well, you want to get promoted? You want to get a paid intern?
To make sure the bite is deep enough, we're going to hit you on the ass with this paddle as you bite.
It's just turned into some weird S&M frat house of cadaver, just weird creep, and the rest of the
work on naked dead people. It is a fucked up situation.
Someone's going to hit you in the ass with a paddle, and the rest of us are going to be in the room watching while we're jerking off. So you have to go through this whole process just to test.
By the way, your mother's here. We brought your mother.
Going to be watching behind the 2-way glass. So I just want you to know. So don't fail. Everyone's watching.
I like to use a 2-way glass so that he can see her as well, but she will be behind glass.
Yeah, I meant to say 1-way glass.
You said 2-way glass, which sounds worse.
It sounds worse. It's 2-way glass. So she knows you're seeing her, and she's watching you while you're biting a dead person. We're slapping the ass.
Or did they have like an animal that they would squeeze to get it to bite? Were they taking a squirrel?
That's kind of creepy. Why are they involving a squirrel with a dead arm? Like, this is just this whole thing is awful from front to back. You've got the fake dentist.
The lady we talked about last week, jacking off the dolphin.
It's like the dolphin lady. Oh, she probably was like, yeah, I'll come in for that. They probably ran her through to these creep scenarios.
So they discovered that the bites produced 23 entirely different marks each time. A more detailed study in 2015, in all honesty, in order to do a scientific experiment, obviously they had a machine with fake teeth on it. Otherwise, Carl probably wouldn't bite exactly the same every time. But
if there was a guy that actually did, he turned into a zombie or like there was something that he went nuts on. He started to go crazy, and then they had to put him down like a fucking rabid dog or something.
Oh, yeah, just if you want to keep your internship, bite these 23 cadavers. We're going to execute you afterwards, but you'll get your internship.
And your mom's watching through two-way glass, which someone in the chat put is basically just a window. And I thank you for
it's a window.
It's a window. I like fancy terms for stuff, Lee.
Is that, wait, are you a real estate agent? And you'll notice over here, two-way glass.
Two-way glass. Each room has light switches that go on and off. So this is a dual functioning light switch.
Also, especially made one-way brick wall. You can only see this side of it.
Custom made one-way brick wall. This is something a lot of homes don't have. This is why it's impressive.
So a more detailed study in 2015. Okay, this is of the two studies, which are both hilarious. This is my favorite one. Carried out by the ABFO certified forensic dentists themselves. So basically, they received so much pressure that by 2015, they finally were like, okay, we got to prove we know our shit. They asked 38 of their fellow diplomates, aka dentists, to review board-certified ABFO dentists, to review photographs presented in real criminal cases where bite mark analysis had been used. So they showed 38 of these expert dentists these photos of bite marks, which is the same thing they would have gotten in a trial. Of the 100 cases that these 38 examined, the analyst reached unanimous agreement in, Graham, would you like to guess the number?
Oh, boy.
Out of 100 cases.
How many times did this work? You mean like?
Did all 38 of them say exactly that is a bite mark and it is from oh no, they were just deciding it was a bite mark. So of the 100 cases, all 38 of them said yes, that is a bite mark.
Oh, were they all agreed?
Agreed. No.
Oh, boom, donut, none. They never agreed on any of them. That's my guess. That's my guess.
You're very close. 4.
Yeah, nice.
4 times did they all agree that it was or was not a bite mark. And it doesn't say this, but I recall hearing this study before, and basically like a third, it was like a third said, on many of them, a third said it was a bite mark, a third said it wasn't a bite mark, and a third said it like was a bite mark that matched the victim, matched the perpetrator. Like it was like perfectly split up as to be completely just a guess. Just a guess.
That is some comprehensive science. That it's 4 out of 100, and in the 4, it's still sort of a bunch of vague maybes in there.
I feel like if you would have flipped a coin for these, you'd end up with more than 4 out of 100. So these two experiments effectively toppled the entire house of cards upon which bite mark analysis had been erected. But keep in mind, when that happened, 2015, there had been, 30 years of these quote-unquote experts running around the country, states prosecuting various people and putting them in prison, some of them being executed based on this nonsense.
There's so much that we've done just in our lifetimes, Lee, that if society doesn't blow itself up and actually progresses and functions, which will be the only way it can continue on, is if it's societies that, species that evolve don't go extinct. If we don't evolve, we're going to go extinct. Anyway, so right. Have a great weekend, everybody. Anyway, as we, if we do evolve, we're going to look back on this era that we've both lived in as like the goddamn dark ages. Like, I mean, this, what you just described to me is like, well, let's see if the witch floats and then put leeches on the, like this is just, we're still doing like medieval hocus pocus under the guise of like experts.
Yeah, it's like medieval shit. But I also think this speaks to the fact that this was serving the ruling class to an extent. That doesn't mean that obviously like these murders aren't being perpetrated between ruling class people or whatever. But what it does is it takes the person that our police want to pin a crime on, and it legitimizes our police by saying they got their man. And these people are brought in as quote unquote experts who can't be denied. And they go in front of the jury, in front of our, it also legitimizes our law and justice, our, how our law system works and our legal system. And it serves all of those purposes, like to pretend America's getting justice, to pretend the police are doing their job, to pretend these so-called forensic experts are doing their job. And it just solidifies all of that bullshit. And in the mix of doing all that, it grinds up people, that many innocent people. The Innocence Project has achieved 375 exonerations over their time. The Innocence Project does great work. And most of those exonerations have come because they were able to check DNA evidence long after the trial, because DNA evidence has gotten better. And in many of the trials, DNA evidence wasn't even available. So they're able to basically check the DNA evidence and say, yeah, you convicted this guy on bite mark analysis, but we now have DNA proving that it wasn't him. It was somebody else. But the Innocence Project realized, as they were proving all these things, that most of these convictions for people that are spending life in prison and have already been in prison 20, 30, 15, 10 years, many of them were, or maybe the vast majority were convicted based on this various forms of forensic science that is bullshit.
Yeah, and part of this bullshit science is kind of what you're talking about, is it feeds this whole kind of broken judicial system of the pressure that's put on police departments, the crime stats, which again, politicians want to say, I'm tough on crime, I brought the crime stats down, or we got convictions. Like that's a big thing in police departments. You got to get a clearance. You're like most detectives, like, what's your clearance rate? Meaning how many convictions on a murder did you get? So you, as a detective, yeah, you want to follow the evidence, but if someone's giving you some hocus pocus evidence and you're not a scientist and you go, all right, you're telling me you're the expert and this is true and this helps me get a conviction rate, that's good for me. I'm not saying like every cop is corrupt or whatever, but I'm saying there's a system in place that allows this type of, flim-flam science to get traction, because everybody, the politicians, the city council, the whatever else, they need these arrest stats, and the media can say, oh, we got the bad guy. There's a crazy criminal, violent, murder loose, got him locked up. Everybody's safe.
And of course, there's also, we shouldn't leave out the race aspect, which is police departments are more likely to pin it on a person of color. And then the jury has an easier time often believing that the cops, when they say, oh, this black guy did it. And, hopefully that's getting a little better in America, but that part of the systemic racism in which we live, but obviously still goes on to a large extent. And, all the better if you can say that black guy did it. And we have this white expert who can tell you that the teeth marks, which aren't actually teeth marks, have proven that. And that's something that I mentioned earlier. Many of the times these aren't even teeth marks. So this guy's convicted on teeth marks on the victim that weren't teeth marks. In one example I saw in a Netflix documentary, the teeth marks, quote unquote, that were used to convict this guy, and I believe it was the same expert Severon, who got him convicted. They found out years later that it was the marks on the body that they had found were from crawfish in the creek where she had been found.
Jesus.
So they're mistaking crawfish bites on a body with teeth marks while the person was alive. Like, it's just nonsense.
Wow. I'm never going to Red Lobster again.
By the way, I just gave away the recipe for Bubba Gump shrimp, one of their main platters.
Do you want our cadaver crawdads melted in butter and garlic? Oh, Bubba, no. Her arm was bitten by a crawdad, not her criminal. Wow. Well, that sounds like episode 109 to me, buddy.
I think that's it. And to let people know, we're headed over to do extra content at patreon.com/government secrets. We're at least going to talk about a justice and information crusader. This is the anniversary of Aaron Schwartz's death, and I think that's an important government secret we'll be talking about. But also, we'll talk about the origin of the word tree hugger.
Oh, I'm sure it's a fun one. I'm sure it wasn't just the FBI didn't concoct it in some sort of torture lab or whatever. Yeah, cool. Well, folks, please go over to patreon.com/government secrets. Right now, we'll be up there in just a couple of minutes going live, and you can watch live. And then if you're new, you can get all the archives. You get all of the bonus content that's only available on Patreon. And it's a great way to support what we're doing. Also, I'm happy to announce my new comedy special, Manifest It, will be out on the All Things Comedy YouTube channel, which is a big platform. It's Bill Burr's company. It's got over 500,000 YouTube subscribers. That'll be the first week of March.
Nice, man. Congrats.
Thank you. I'm very happy. We just figured that out last week, and you know, we're going to start clipping it out the week before last week of February, and then all through March.
If I had known it was a special, I wouldn't have heckled. I apologize. I didn't.
Well, I just thought it was weird that you showed up deliberately drunk to my special going, I'm going to show you what's special about this, you son of a bitch.
I am always deliberately drunk. Never accidentally.
Never like, whoops, how did this gin go down my throat? How did this happen? I don't know what happened. So yeah, folks, stay tuned. You know, subscribe to all my channels and go to grahamelwood.com, get on the newsletter, and I'll be announcing tour dates, because once the special is out in March, starting March through most of the year, I'll be touring all over the country. So I'll be announcing tour dates and all this stuff. So stick around, go to grahamelwood.com.
All right, man. See you there.
All right, ladies and gentlemen.
Follow my stuff at leecamp.net. I just interviewed Stella Assange, Julian Assange's wife. And yeah, a lot of good stuff over there.
Right on. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this has been Government Secrets, episode 109. Operation Ukraine Nazis and Fake Teeth.
See you there, man.
All right, buddy. Thanks for watching, everybody. Like, share, subscribe. Thanks, everybody, watching over on the Rockfin. And really appreciate everybody. Thank you, Holly and Blaze Saver Wolf, for being our moderators. And we will see you over at Patreon in about 2 minutes. Thank you so much.